praise is due to God, the Lord of the world, and may the peace and blessings of God be upon the Prophet Muhammad, his family and companions. Students, faculty, friends, and colleagues, I greet you all with Islamic greeting of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today is an event of a series of events sponsored by the Muslim Student Union here at UCF. The Muslim Student Union is a religious student organization that seeks to serve the Muslim student community by providing religious services and fostering social, spiritual, educational, and moral development in a way that compels Muslim students to contribute positively and uniquely to the campus community and beyond. This week, titled Palestine, an Invisible Nation, aims to educate and raise awareness on campus about the plight of the Palestinian people who have been living under illegal occupation for almost 63 years with the hope that this knowledge will turn into action. Our annual week is unfortunately often being misconstrued to be one that harbors anti-Semitism. The MSU has clarified numerous times and will continue to clarify that hatred of any particular group on the basis of their race, color, ethnicity, or religion, including people of the Jewish faith, is not and will not be tolerated. This is not a politically correct statement to be recited for public purposes, but it is among the deepest convictions of our own faith. It is disingenuous to label anyone who has the courage to stand up and speak out against the apartheid policies of Israel as anti-Semitic. The week's aim, in short, is simply to call for an end to the oppression of the indigenous Palestinians. Co-sponsors for this week include Al-Ghanima, Students for Justice in Palestine, Black Student Union, American Indian Student Association, Radical Student Union, MECHA, Asian Pacific Student Association, Workers Student Alliance, Kaba Bayan, and Turkish Student Association. Before we start today's event, we will begin with some verses from the Muslim Holy Book, the Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين صدق الله العظيم. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, O you who have believed, if there comes to you a person who is disobedient with information, investigate it, lest you harm a people out of ignorance and become over what you have done regretful. And surely God speaks the truth. Thank you.
Thank you. As a Holocaust survivor, political activist Hedy Epstein lost her parents and most of her family to the Jewish ethnic cleansing of World War II. After traveling to Israeli-occupied West Bank, Epstein witnessed firsthand the injustice and violation of human rights imposed upon the Palestinians by Israelis. Since then, Epstein's activism has spoken out against the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and the siege of Gaza, which has included her participation in several non-violent demonstrations against Israel. Today, she will be urging us to be aware of the theme that resonates in her book, Remembering is Not Enough. That mere remembrance of the Palestinian plight is no longer enough. The time has come for action. Without further ado, I'd like to present Hedy Epstein.
Good evening, everybody. I think it's wonderful that I'm here tonight because I was here last year. About a year year ago. Being invited back is probably the best compliment that any speaker could ever have. So thank you very much for inviting me to come the second time. And thank you very much for the introduction. I particularly appreciated that it was short, because sometimes people can tell my whole life story, and then what am I going to say? I want to start out by telling you a little bit about my background so that you understand why I am who I am today and why I am what I am today. And then I'm going to talk about my 5 trips to the Israeli-occupied West Bank. I've been there 5 times since 2003, and I tried to go to Gaza 4 times, and I have not made it. And I want to talk about Flotilla 2 briefly, and then there'll be time for questions and answers. And I know that you all are going to be respectful. I don't know who you all are, but I know that your questions and your comments are going to be respectful. You may disagree, that's fine, that's great, but be respectful. Because if you're not, I'm not going to respond to that. I was born in Germany, as you just heard, and when Hitler came to power in 1933, I was 8 years old. And I remember hearing my parents and other adults talking about Hitler, saying at first they hoped he wouldn't come to power, and after he did come to power, they were saying they hoped he wouldn't remain in power very long. But I didn't really think it had anything to do with me. I just thought it was nonsense that adults talk about. But I very quickly, within the next 2 months, realized that indeed it did have something to do with me. And the very first thing that I was aware of was a boycott of Jewish businesses all over Germany on Saturday, April 1st, 1933, just about 2 months after the Nazis came to power. And my father and his younger brother had a business that my great-grandfather started in 1858. And there was a Nazi standing in front of our store and in front of all the other Jewish stores in the village where we lived. And the purpose of the boycott was to prevent Christians from shopping in Jewish stores. And it certainly had that effect on that day, but it also had long-range effects. And then my parents very quickly realized after Hitler came to power that Germany was not a good place to raise a family if you were Jewish. And so they tried to leave Germany, and their efforts to leave became increasingly more desperate. And they were willing to go any place and do anything just to get out of Germany. But there was one place that they were not willing to go to, and that was Palestine. And why was that? Because they were anti-Zionists. And as a young child, 8 years, 10 years old, I didn't really understand completely what Zionism or anti-Zionism is. But if my parents were anti-Zionists, then I was an anti-Zionist too. And I remember one time going to my grandmother and saying, "Grandma, I'm an anti-Zionist." And my grandmother said, "Don't say that." And I said, "Yes, but Mommy and Daddy are anti-Zionists." "Don't say that." And there was a Zionist youth group in the village, and all the Jewish children belonged to it, except I. My parents did not allow that. In November of 1938, there was the first major act of persecution against Jews in Germany. And though my parents had tried to protect me and tried to make sure that I didn't really experience too much of what was happening against Jews, they could not protect me that day. I was unceremoniously kicked out of school by the principal, who said, "Get out, you dirty Jew." And I didn't realize it then, but that was my last day in school in Germany. Because after that, Jewish children were no longer allowed to attend either public or private school. When I came home, my home had been vandalized. My father had been arrested. For 2 weeks, we didn't know where he was. And when he finally came home 4 weeks later, he was no longer the father that I knew. He was an old, broken, very sick man. He had been sent to the concentration camp down. I was fortunate to be able to leave Germany on May 18, 1939, on a children's transport, or intertransport as it was called, to England. England took in almost 10,000 mostly Jewish children in the 9 months preceding World War II. Some of us were placed in foster homes, others in institutional settings. I was in a foster home. And I remember my parents, when I was leaving, giving me kinds of admonitions that parents give their children, be good, be honest, etc. And the last sentence always was, and we will see each other again soon. And I believe that. Whether they did, I don't know. Because my parents, as well as other family members and other people from that section of Germany where I come from, Southwest Germany, were deported on October 22nd, 1940, originally to camps that were located in what was then Vichy France, the library with the Nazis. And then in the summer of 1942, those family members who survived the camps in France were all sent to Auschwitz, and none of them have ever been heard from again. I came to the United States in May 1948, about the same time that Israel became a state. And I had some really mixed feelings. On one hand, I was glad that there was a place for survivors to go to who perhaps couldn't or chose not to go back to the place where they originally came from. But on the other hand, I remembered my parents' ardent anti-Zionism. And I was afraid that somewhere down the road, no good would come of this. What that might be, I couldn't possibly imagine. But I was new in the United States, new things to learn, new impressions. And so Israel and Palestine were on the back burner of my interest and remained there for quite a long time. But in 1982, I received what you might call a wake-up call. I learned or heard something about the massacres in the 2 refugee camps of Safra and Shatila, located in Lebanon. And I needed to find out what was that all about, and who was responsible for it, who was adversely affected by it, and what happened between 1948 and 1982 when I paid little or no attention to that part of the world. And as I learned more and understood more, I began to speak out. Well, I became very upset about the policies and practices of the Israeli government and the Israeli military vis-a-vis the Palestinian people and Palestinian land. And as I understood more and learned more, I began to speak out and speak out publicly against those policies. In 2003, in the fall of 2003, I participated in a vigil in St. Louis, where I live, a vigil against the war in Iraq. We've been holding those vigils since about a week after 9/11, every Sunday evening at 7 o'clock. And originally it was to oppose the war starting in Iraq, and after it started in March of 2003, it was in opposition to that war. We've now added Afghanistan, and I hope we don't have to add any more countries, although I'm afraid we will, given our country, given our government, given our president, won the Peace Prize, Nobel Peace Prize, but is a war president. And I was participating in this vigil on Sunday evening in September of 2003, when my friend Diane, standing next to me, asked me, have you ever thought about going to Palestine? And I was absolutely shocked by my response, which was, yes, I'm going. Wait a minute. What did I just say? I didn't make any plans to go, but apparently subconsciously, I must have been thinking about it and planning to go, and that question triggered my response. And so just a couple months later, in December of